So welcome everybody to Job Search Strategies. We're joined today by Vic Weigman from Q Solutions, Q Squared Solutions. And I'll let Vic introduce himself, but they've been a strong supporter of A to I and our grad pack here at NC State. So please join me in welcoming Vic to give his presentation here and to share his knowledge with us today. Vic?
Yeah, thanks, Joe. Hopefully everybody can hear me just fine. Excited to be with you guys this afternoon. Talk a little bit about looking for jobs, I guess, on the other side of the desk, right? A little bit about myself before I get started into my talk. I guess like many of you, I certainly spent a fair amount of time in academia. In fact, I spent 10 years at the University of North Carolina, collecting probably more degrees than anybody should have, but thought that's what I certainly needed and wanted to do to really kind of make the job I have right now, which I'm certainly very excited about today. I'll only briefly touch on, but involved in research from the very beginning, all the way starting in undergrad. Myself looked at lots of different options for what to do when I'm done. Working with industry and working with kind of faster pace area always spoke to me. Had a lot of collaborations even in graduate school doing that. Ended up going to work for a startup in 2009, which has grown substantially. And I'll show you kind of in the next slide how that is. But I try to keep a very close route to a lot of students, such as yourself. Really a big fan. Joe talked about support, but certainly a big fan of the A2I program and getting folks to explore what's out there and what that means for you and how you really find the best fit and suit for your skills and how you turn your knowledge into what you want out of it. You know, how you want to make and do things and how to be known as. I'm glad to kind of extend industry as a part of that because it certainly is a mechanism for doing that. I have spoken to the crowd here a few times about job search strategies in the past. Joe has past slides he can share where I talk about finding the right type of job. What title is that job? You know, you want to be whatever. What does the job market say that role should be called? Today, I'm going to focus a little bit about monetary considerations. Oddly enough, it's one of the parts of my job I like to talk with my candidates the most about, and something very few are prepared to do. So I wanted to spend today's part on kind of focusing on how do you have that conversations about salary? How do you put a dollar sign to your value, and what type of factors interplay and being comfortable and confident with that, not only decision, but discussion, as it is something that is had a live conversation with the hiring manager or the company. So I'll talk about that primarily today. I'm happy to answer all kinds of other questions as we get to the end. But that is certainly something I think less people talk about and most people feel unprepared for when they get to my desk. They had a great time meeting with the team. They really like it here. And it comes to talking about salary and they ask, well, what do you think I should get paid? And we certainly want you guys to have a lot more preparation than that. And I'm sure many of you do. But I wanted to kind of lay out some ground rules and observations I've had for the last 11 years of hiring. So it's a lot of people over a lot of regions, over a lot of time, and I've kind of exposed a lot. So even though my field is in life sciences and bioinformatics and data science and the like, our company now is very large and it involves a lot of folks in the laboratory, out of the laboratory, doing business, doing marketing, doing economics, doing finance, all these other kinds of things. So I'm happy to go over those experiences as well. Since this is such a large crowd, I will say kind of hold your questions to the end, or if you want to chat them and then Joe can play moderator role, asking questions, that would be outstanding. And that way, with so many people, there's enough time for everybody to see the material and also respond. So, yep, as I said, I work for Q Squared Solutions. We are a global clinical trial testing laboratory. which is kind of a unique area. So, if you guys get sick or you go to your general practitioner or are at the hospital and they need to go run a test on something, generally they have a reference lab at their facility for doing that. Most people are familiar with LabCorp or Quest Diagnostics being one of the Qs in Q Squared. That's our parent company. We strive to provide clinical trial tests and logistics, right? A patient has to go to, let's say, a clinic in northern Scotland, but also in Vienna and also in Spain. And all of them are receiving treatment for Alzheimer's disease because of a new clinical trial. How we collect specimens, how they're labeled, how they're shipped, how we collect genetic material or molecular or protein level material, all has to be handled. So Q Squared as a whole does that. I represent the genomics research and development arm, where we build clinical tests to empower clinical trials and determine which patients may get what therapy based on their own molecular underpinnings. Most recently, I stopped a lot of programs and worked on global COVID testing. So if you search, our company site, you'll see tons of different areas of testing we do for coronavirus worldwide, which is pretty exciting to do so in a short amount of time. So this is a slide I have because we'll send it out, but just to give you an idea of kind of what we do when a company wants to make a drug. Obviously, there's the part of how it interfaces with patients, but if a patient responds or doesn't respond, we kind of want to know why. And we want to collect the data to run the statistics or the modeling for this kind of stuff. And that's where we come in. We develop the test. We send the kits, the collection kits, whether it's a spit test or a blood draw. All those are going worldwide. And we have data that tracking. Think about like a Domino's pizza tracker, right? You can say your tumor biopsy in Singapore is en route to Japan. Right, we have that level of logistics and underpinning to actually get it to our laboratorians that are running the tests, running the assays that we develop actually right here in RTP and a couple other sites in the globe. So as such, company has grown a tremendous amount. When I started in 09, it was 25 people. Now we're about 4,500. So as you can imagine, that's a lot of growth, and a lot of growth doesn't happen without hiring. So again, I'm happy to talk a lot about that, and I'll stop kind of discussing Pitts the company and get on to that part. One thing I do want to make sure that we discuss, because this is part of you guys thinking about what's next and looking for jobs and things on these lines. And I'm not going to go over, how the new normal has evolved people's working areas, right? I'm not talking out of my office, which has a nice webcam area with a nice picture behind me and some bookcases that make it look like I'm very studious, right? I don't have that at home. An office would certainly be more of a luxury with small kids running around, but we have to make adjustments. And with that comes some real thoughts and considerations of hiring, right? Because people's fear of the unknown, you guys are certainly bright enough to understand economics of the situation here. It does affect businesses. So I want to make sure that I at least bring it up so that we're clear of kind of how that impacts the today economy and the today job search path. But certainly what I'm talking about in the later part is prevalent all the time, right? So most companies are in a hiring freeze. There are certainly a lot of IT and work from home places that can thrive in this environment. Myself, I have lots of research projects that don't need somebody to physically be in our laboratory, but we are a laboratory. We have to touch patient samples. We have to maintain and run our machines. So half of our staff are scheduled in a very unique way to make sure we can do that. But as such, all the hiring that we have planned is frozen. It hasn't gone away. It's not like most companies are going to abandon certain drugs. They're still going to run them. But that northern Scotland clinic that I was talking about might be still closed. So we can't collect specimens, and it becomes a little bit tricky, right? And I will say it's worth, one thing I want to drill home for today's conversation is when you're doing an interview, this is you selling you. But in any type of relationship you have, whether it's with a hiring manager, whether it's with a friend, whether it's with your PI or advisor, or with your teacher, you get the most out of that relationship when you understand where that person is coming from, right? So paying aggressively for talent, which I'm all for, is now falling second to maintaining our existing talent. We've taken a lot of steps to make sure we haven't fired or furloughed a single soul, and we don't plan on doing that, right? But that changes, right? Nobody on my team got promoted. Nobody got hired ever since May, and this is something that, or since April. This is something that a lot of people are having to deal, right? Recruiters are still going around. I still get updates from recruiters on positions I have online, because the second that things are back running smoothly, I want to get hiring. I've got lots to do. But you need to be mindful about how that means for you, and is that meeting your timelines and needs and desires? As I've kind of joked to a lot of students I actively advise, this might be the time where making the decision to do a postdoc is made for you. Another year, probably a good idea. Not that you can't look. I've hired a lot of people where I talk to them 1 to 2 years out of them ever being ready to come out, whether it be postdoc, undergrad, graduate. Keeping relationships with hiring managers and companies that you really like, there is no shortcut or substitute for personal networking. And I know that's something that Joe and the team have drilled into you guys' heads from day one. That's why I'm here. I'm happy to talk to you guys offline about any of these kinds of things. So a couple things here at the bottom. Positions are aligned, you should consider them open, right? If you don't hear back from a recruiter or hiring manager in a week, assume that's closed. I certainly had to go and take my positions, look what's online, go to my HR team and say, hey, close these guys. I don't want people applying, and then I have to keep telling them the same story. Man, your CV looks outstanding, but I don't know when I can hire again. Nobody wants to have those conversations, and you guys, rightfully so, should want to find people quickly that want to leverage your talents, right? So if they're not responding, assume closed, go about your business, right? If you do get interviewed, position could be live. Be clear on what a start would be, like time of year. Oh, well, yeah, we want to hire this position, but it's not for December. Have those discussions early. What are your working conditions? Do you have to go into the office or lab? Are you going to have to be in a small working area? Not every company follows the same rules, especially geographically. Every state and city have different rules. So you want to be mindful of that, of where these things are required. Assume all remote work. If you're not physically touching machines or instruments or things that require maintenance that are static or frozen in place. Do you have home facilities to support, right? I certainly see folks on my team like sitting on stools that they have for their little island in their kitchen. No, don't. God, can you imagine sitting on that for 8 hours every day? Wait, no. So make sure you're working comfortably, right? Your company owes that to you. That most of them will help you do that kind of stuff. But have those conversations. You'd be surprised at the amount of companies, if small or large, that don't think about that kind of stuff, right? So you certainly, the more open dialogue you have, the better. So again, and I start with looking at the collateral pieces, because this gets into what you can ask for. This gets into evaluating and valuing what you're bringing to the table to further that company's mission, right? This is from a previous deck that I gave before, but it is really important, and I'm sure I don't have to tell you guys that finding a great place to work is the dream, right? You want to know that what you're building, what you're making, what you're investing into every day has value outside of that team and outside of maybe that individual company. So looking at the collateral, what they post online, right on the front page, look at the events, look at the news. What are they proud about? Look at their Twitter feeds, look at their LinkedIn profiles. Hell, we even have a YouTube page now, right? We're doing a lot to let people know you haven't heard of us because we're a private company. You sure have certainly taken drugs that we helped develop. I can tell you that much. There's certainly tests that you or loved ones have taken in certain stages of sicknesses that we created, but you'll never know, right? Because we do that for other people. But we're always happy to do it. So look at the collateral, look what they're making, look what they're investing on, right? And I bring this up because you see, okay, from our number one fact sheet that we have, this is on the front page and this is kind of on the back page. The front page is telling you these are the technological tenets that companies focused on. Some of them may go one more level granular, where maybe what you did in your postgraduate work or undergraduate work was in one of these types of things. Great, you have a fit. When you look as they expound on the back page, okay, we need to have lab solutions. Okay, it's globally minded. Maybe you have fluency in a certain language. This is going to be prevalent. Maybe you are here studying for school, but actually your home is elsewhere. Is it possible to you to go back home and work for a global company you met here? Absolutely, right? So look at where they're putting their investments. They're telling you this on their page, right? They're telling you here, oh, technology, we're a heavy tech shop, right? Sample tracking, consent management, it's clearly thinking software, genomics, right? Looking at management systems for integrating clinical data with testing data, absolutely. You hear here, data analytics, function. These are all things that you're like, these are skills that I have. So you already know those skills that you're building, and I'm going to get to that in the next slide, are having value because the company is telling you on their first page, this is what we're all about. This is what we're focusing on. And that drives a lot of where the salary discussion is going to come in. They're going to pay more for people who are directly delivering on the things their company is externalizing as their expertise, right? I mentioned this in the last slide as well, but I'm going to gloss over a little bit here. Department of Labor is a great place to find stuff. So if you know what your job title should be, which is one of the first things you should know, right? Because what you do in school now and how you think of that title in certain industries may be completely different. So, we have a lot of folks that do flow cytometry as an example here on my slide. Well, when you put that in here, people that use flow cytometry every day could be of all over the place. Now, we're pretty much looking at medical and clinical laboratory techs, so I'm glad that's first. But you want to use this to help guide, after you found the company that matches, that their job descriptions, that their titles of the jobs are matching what you're looking for. And this is a great place to do it, as well as ONET, which is right here. You can take that title right here, and when you click on it, it'll send you, and it'll tell you what the salary ranges for that are directly from the Department of Labor. That can be one of your sources you use to drive where you think your salary piece needs to be, right? Because evidenced salary making, I can tell you that none of you should put trust that a company in every situation knows the right salary to pay somebody. This is immensely subjective. I've certainly had folks come to me being like, well, these last 3 interviews, these companies were willing to offer me X, Y, and Z. And I'm thinking, whoa, that's, wildly different than what I'm offering. So how do I address that? How do I know that's true? How do I know that I may be missing the mark on what the market is telling me people need to be paid, right? I pay a lot of attention to salaries. So I work with the Department of Labor setting salaries for data scientists, bioinformaticians, computational biologists, biostatisticians. So this is something that I do a lot of. But yeah, check ONET online. It is a great place to start. I'm not saying it's universally accurate, but it is a great data point. Job descriptions, again, I want to make sure, because this is all important as I talk about skill sets here. Look at those job descriptions. So once you found what the title is, you're looking at a company, that company is going to have that title. In that title is going to be a list of generally soft skills and hard skills, right? You're matching up directly what's on your CV with the hard skills, right? This is going to be where your work experience comes from. This is going to be where you're showing proof points. Maybe you have a portfolio of things that you've done. Hard skills are doing that. The real difficult stuff is how you hit those soft skills. How do you show somebody that you can translate your skill sets that you developed, the hard ones, and make that work in a team, make that work in an organization, make it fluid to complete a larger, more complicated program. And you're going to see a lot of taglines: works closely with, collaborates with, develop requirements for, what you're accountable for. So ask yourself those things. Most people are terrible at job description writing. I will certainly blame myself for some of the other ones, because what I want to say and how you standardize that in a global corporate HR organization is very different. So really, if it's not obvious in these hard or soft skill bits, ask, what is this person accountable for? Is that clear? You know, what do they make? What do they create at the end of the day? How do they say, like, here's your deliverable, I did my job? Who uses it? How many touch points? Are you doing this by yourself? Are you doing a small team, a large team, a global team, an always remote team? You know, who leads me? Who do I lead? These are all questions that the job description should either answer or you handle in one of your first meetings. Now, on to actual dollar point bits here. So quick note on Indeed and Glassdoor. Man, I would love to have had these tools when I was searching for jobs. This stuff is really cool. It really, really is. And I spend time as much as I can to add salaries and ranges into these things. So because I know it's what people use. So I want to make sure it's accurate, right? I put in here bioinformatics because that's certainly one of my major aims and responsibilities at my company. But note, regions and job fit make a really big difference, right? Like scientists, what does that mean? Data scientists, also very vague, right? Certainly there are data scientists in the AI space or machine learning space that might make $122,000. There might be people that don't. So you have to really, really, really kind of narrow that down and also get it geographically stated. Here's an area here where you actually look in Raleigh-Durham. That base pay seems a little bit more on track. That is a realistic range. I know, because I've spent time trying to tune this to where I think it's markedly appropriate. But if in Research Triangle Park versus, and I know a lot of you guys represent other universities from not here, cost of living for the place your job is makes a big difference, right? It can flux 10, 20, sometimes 30%. Make sure when you're looking at these salaries, they're not based out of areas where cost of living are so high, you show up wildly out of sync with the person you're talking to. Remember, your job is also to know where that person is coming from. So if they're based in Zebulon, right down the road, the company, they're probably not going to pay you downtown San Francisco wages because the cost of living is so substantially different. And also remember, as you critique companies and look at their comments, that who's following internet etiquette, who's using it as a kvetch board versus really giving you solid information. So salaries, you know, how do you argue that you're worth it? So I've talked about identifying the job title that fits, looking at what that kind of job title gets paid, looking at what the regions and differences for those items, also company importance, right? All these things are important. They're all part of where you start laying some stakes to start heralding in on salary. So again, it is really a hugely variable topic. I can't understate that enough of how different it is from place to place and what you get paid. And this can be not always geography. It could be that, oh my God, desperation. This company has to hire that type of person. They've tried before, they failed, they need them so bad, they're willing to grossly overpay. Good for you, right? Market demand. But that might be driving a lot of things. So if you talk to company A and they're willing to pay you 30% more than company B, it could be due to desperation. It could be due to, it's a startup and they need to hire people quickly. So they're willing to pay a little bit more so they can start making stuff. returning money on an investor's capital, right? Could be an individual mandate. Somebody like me who's going to always look at market rates. I'm going to make sure that my salaries are competitive, right? So myself in the company now versus myself in the company 9 years ago can argue different salaries than I could before, right? Geography, I already talked about that. Shifts in supply and demand, talked about that as well, right? If for whatever reason, the entire market is flooded with a bunch of PhDs in biology or in economics, there's going to be so many to pick from, you can go lower in salary. That's not necessarily anybody's fault, but they're realistic to why salary rates can differ. So be thinking, and I know you guys are doing this already. I certainly did it when I was in graduate school, but how are you differentiating from your peers to warrant your ask, right? If you and somebody in your class are going after the same job, how are you different? Is that clear when you read the CV? Is it clear when you're talking to the hiring manager? It should be, okay? So driving increases in ask. So you found a salary, you've laid some stakes down, you know you're gonna go in with that number. Great. So when you're going with that number, how are you going to adjust it? Are you going to adjust it up and down for expectations when you have that conversation with the hiring manager, right? Do you have the relevant job experience and skills? Well, that's great. Have you been employed before, right? Have you spent some time not in academia working in a real job? That makes a difference. Does where you're coming from have renown? So are you going to work for a place where you say, oh, I went to school at so-and-so, or I went to work in so-and-so's lab, or my advisor was Dr. Blah, blah. Those are going to make a lot of importance. I certainly go and look at those places when I'm interviewing people or looking at CVs. Did you make things? Did you publish work, tools, software, certifications, works of literature, etc.? Important, right? Examples of working in team environments, like any one of these things, more of these things that you can show, you can take that stake that you have and move it up, because this is valuable to a company bringing somebody on board and you starting from day one contributing, right? If the company's saving months and months of training time because you're already ready to go, that's not wasted salary. Wasted is in quotes, right? It's not wasted salary for them to spend that money because you're returning that investment immediately. You know, if you have that rate, you still can go for what I have here in the blue, the salary you think is appropriate for that job, but be prepared for a decrease if you don't have prior working experience outside academia. All right. If you shifted careers, not to say that you weren't a stellar. I looked at a CV about a month ago with a person who was, oddly enough, a control operator at NASA in Huntington, and they wanted to give that up. They wanted to do bioinformatics, oddly enough. So that was really awesome, first of all, because a huge space geek. But okay, do those skills directly translate? Or what if you went from, something completely different, not data, not logistics operated, right? That can make a difference, right? You don't have published work or certifications. Again, you came from school. It's not crazy to not have this stuff. It's totally okay. Some people get lucky. But if you don't, you should at least prepare yourself that somebody might push back on your offer. That's okay. I'm just telling you where these things may go. And some of this may be very obvious. If you're like me, certainly long academic tenure, again, something that might not be your fault, but could look negatively on a salary conversation. So preparation and confidence is key, right? These are things that before you have a discussion of salary, during, and after, right? So before is you're going in for that first interview. I always ask my people what their salary range is on the first interview, because if they're wildly different, we may not even need to have an interview. It may not be worth their time, because when they did this stuff in the before category, their mind is made, okay? It's not worth using anybody else's time. During is when you're actively in that conversation. It has switched to, we're going to talk about your salary now. All right. And after is, you also don't want to work at a company that's a high-pitched sales arena, right? You're not buying a timeshare right then or else, right? They're going to tell you what they're offering. You're thinking about it. It's okay to wait 24, 48 hours before. Now, when I make an offer to somebody for a salary, I give them 48 hours to say yes, no, maybe so, right? So these are things that you can think about. So before, ask people in the field, right? If you're coming from an area, ask recent graduates, hey, do you mind telling me what you make? I know that's really weird and kind of culturally taboo, but I bet if you ask that person, did you wish that you had somebody to ask what to get paid? I bet their answer would have been yes, right? So pay it forward. When I started looking at bioinformatics, there weren't those jobs. I couldn't ask anybody what bioinformaticians got paid because nobody had that. There wasn't a thing I could go look at. I was totally grasping at straws. Use multiple sites, websites, not geographic sites. I mentioned LinkedIn, Glassdoor, Indeed, ONet. Correct for geography, and you'll start getting in a good range. Leverage multiples on the previous slide, right? If you have more of these types of things that fit, all right, that might impact your ask, that range you just set, 2, 5, maybe 10% if you're hitting all those hard requirements, right? What environment do you want to work in, right? Goodness of fit is really important. And I will say I applaud the mentality that I'm seeing of people coming out of school that want to work at places that matter and places that are giving them satisfaction of not only a job well done, but a job that has impact to people. Because that means that we can really talk about money as a necessary byproduct and not the only thing that matters when it comes to choosing a career, not a job. I'm not talking about salary considerations for your next job. That's a transactional arrangement. I'm talking about career considerations, things that you want people to know you as. What types of people do you gel with? Do they work here? You probably wouldn't be surprised that you have a lot in common with your future coworkers, right? So yeah, you're in the conversation, right? You made it through all the interviews, everything looked great, and now it's time to talk about what's next, all right? Be firm at your number, all right? State why you think that number is fair. Cite sources, right? Again, the hiring manager may not be on top of the market, right? That's fine, right? That's why it's a conversation, not an ultimatum. Goodness, don't do that. Don't say I'm going to make this or else, because you may not get that job, but if your name ever comes up again, they're going to remember you were rude. I remember every single rude conversation I have. I have a list I keep. I can tell you that. How's the company going to support salary over time? You may have a lot more money at this startup, but that money goes away in 18 months. Is that something you're willing to make a gamble on? Make sure you ask, right? What are hiring manager constraints to hiring? Are they told this is as max they could ever do? You may have a great relationship and then they tell you, I cannot offer any more than this due to company mandate. I cannot, right? Then you start having this after conversation about full compensation. We'll get to that point. As teammates, when you're on one-on-ones with your future peers, ask them if they feel they're compensated according to the market, right? Do they feel like they're making where they should be or what they thought when they came out of school? Ask them. That's a totally fair question for you to ask. Not ask them their salary. Do not do that. But certainly you can ask them if they feel they're compensated properly. And then after, full compensation, it's not just about money. It could be you want lots of vacation. You want great health care. You want nice office. You want to work remotely. There are benefits that you can ask for and request, right? Does the company match your ethos? If you're moving, does that salary cover your cost of living for you to actually save any money? Or if it doesn't work out, you can transfer to another job in that place, right? Always be respectful and courteous with the hiring manager. You might not be able to work anything out. You may want more than they're willing to offer. It's okay to say no, right? As long as someone's upfront and honest with me, this is a business transaction. I'm not going to unfriend you on Instagram because you decline my job offer, right? We are adults now. We're talking at a business level. Say, I really like it, but I just can't go that low, even with the full benefits package. They're going to respect that. Always be courteous. Think about where they're coming from too. And ask, I can't do it at this rate today. Where do you think you're going to be 6 months to a year from now? Things can change overnight. There's a great article here from the Harvard Business Review. I listen to their podcast, IdeaCast. I have it at my office. I think it's just a great place to learn the intricacies of dealing with industry and interconnections. It's a great place to look at. So really, Joe, I'll certainly turn it over for Q&A.
So much, Vic. I really appreciate this. This was very informative, really great talk. You're an excellent speaker, and we really appreciate you spending your time with us this afternoon.
Great. I appreciate it, guys. Thanks a lot for spending the time. Again, you can contact Joe. Joe can get in contact with me. I'm certainly happy to chat over the phone and help out here. So you guys have a great afternoon.
Have a good one, Vic.
All right, Joe. Cheers.